a very special edition of the Speakeasy. Why is it so special, Glenn?
Because it's Christmas.
I actually thought you were going to say because all three of us are in the Speakeasy for the very first time.
What?
First time ever.
Yeah. All
It's
three of
not
us.
happened before.
Yeah.
And who knows, after tonight, will it
May
happen
never
again?
happen
It might
again.
be terrible. But
Yeah.
here we all are.
Yeah.
Me, Nate Morgan Locke.
I'm Glen Scrivener.
And I'm Paul Feesey.
And together we are
Team Speakeasy.
Locke Scrivener.
Yeah.
Scribs easy. Lovely.
But yes, it is. I mean, it is special as well because Advent Sunday was yesterday, and so we are getting ever closer to the joyful time of Christmas, as you will be able to tell from our beautiful decorated set. As you
Yes.
can see.
Yes. Although, does it look to anyone else as though Santa is in a state of undress and he's just been throwing his garments over the changing wall? Is that?
Yeah. If
Am I the
anyone
only one that looks
on
like
the live chat notices any more items of Santa's clothing,
do let us know.
Come-
Back in there.
comes out in a towel.
He's going to have to be
Let's
back there
hope
for an
not.
hour. Yeah, while we're here.
But yeah, so is the Feesey household ready for Christmas? Is the tree up? Have you got advent calendars ready to go?
No, not at all.
No?
We haven't got remotely ready for Christmas yet.
Yeah.
No.
You've had other things on your mind.
We had a few other things
this
on our
year.
mind, but that's true. But no, we're not at the tree. I refuse to buy a tree before December, at least.
Okay.
You know.
Okay.
And
okay.
I've seen a few people already on my Facebook feed, people I know who I would have counted as friends, put things up, but that's over now. So.
Okay.
Tree.
And a real tree, obviously.
Yeah, we tend to get a real tree.
Yeah. But there's no option really, is there? I mean, you wouldn't go plastic, would you?
You got to do a real tree.
You got to do a real tree.
You can't go plastic in this day and age. Probably not allowed, is it?
Well, if you
Frowned
go,
upon.
if you do a new plastic
You
one every
can't-
year,
yeah, yeah.
that would
Plastic
be
one,
that
and then
would
we
be
just
bad.
throw it in the sea afterwards.
apparently the elephants at the zoo love it. Just give them a-
Yeah. You really get a lot out.
That's what I hear. Yeah.
Yeah, we do a real tree, but when we were living in the States, we would always put the tree up the day after Thanksgiving.
Yes.
So that
So
you
when's
would-
Thanksgiving? What's the date?
so
November
last Thursday was like the 25th
time? Right.
of
Or
and
6th,
then
was it? Yeah.
yeah, you then put up the tree on Black Friday
That's the
to
tradition.
try and cheer,
Yeah.
before.
Yeah.
Because presumably at that point, then the
You fight
Advent
pagan with
Sunday-
pagan, don't you? Yeah, the tree versus consumerism.
it.
Yeah.
That's it. But we haven't actually done that this year, so there is no tree up in the Morgan Locke house at
Yeah.
the moment.
We have a plastic one.
You've got yours
so-
up.
Yeah.
You've got yours up. Okay.
Emma's happy with that. So
Yeah.
whatever she's happy with.
And is it
makes
up
her
yet? Or
Happy
you-
Christmas. Oh yeah, it's up.
Oh, really?
Our next door neighbor, she had her tree up since the 12th of November. So our kids have just been like, when are we getting ours
Wow.
up? And
Man.
and they've got lights along their part of the house, and so they've asked, can we extend the lights to our bit? I'm like, fine. So we've had a lot of bling up already at Shea Scrivener.
We talked a little bit about this last week, but it feels as though people are more ready or more desperate to start Christmas with a vengeance this year than
Yeah.
before, because
yeah.
we missed one. Like
Yeah.
it almost last year didn't count.
I'm going to make up for it now.
Yep, double Christmas.
So we're gonna do double strength Christmas.
Yeah, well, that was the Tesco ad that we had a look
Yeah.
at last week, which is "Don't stop me now, I'm having
Yeah.
such a good time."
Yeah.
And then Boris gets up at 5 p.m. on Saturday.
Says
Cut that out.
the crop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The timing of Boris doing it at 5 p.m. Like that is like for a whole culture that's suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder,
Yeah.
like to do it at 5 p.m.
yeah.
was just utter cruelty. Didn't you think? Like
Yeah.
pick any other time, because that was the time that he would, like back in April 2020. That was when he would come, and
That was when they would do
it was
the
always the
regular
5 p.m.
ones.
Yeah,
It was
you would have been in
I
America,
see,
but
I
yeah, it
didn't
was.
get it.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
But
And we just got the death toll, and it was just like heavy 5 p.m. every day, and then
Yeah, I'd forgotten it was every day, wasn't it?
and
For a while.
then and then sort of Saturday morning, I saw on the Sky TV like
Yeah.
little chyron going past, and
Yeah.
it said Boris is going to make an announcement at 5 p.m. And literally, it just stopped me in my
Yeah.
tracks, and like, you can't cancel Christmas, and Boris is like, hold my beer.
well, who knows?
Mm.
Who knows? Maybe it all will the test will be done and they'll go, yeah, it's not a problem.
Yeah.
We're gonna
We'll
let all
move
the
past
balls go
Omicron
back.
to the next Greek letter, which is Phi.
Is it Phi
I don't know.
Chi Psi next?
Okay.
I
Yeah.
I
think.
don't know. Bit rusty now.
Yeah. The alphabet's the first thing you learn, and then the first thing you forget.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
we won't talk about the letters we just skipped over. The reasons for that. But yes, so Christmas here at Speak Life, we're getting cracking on with that. And on Friday we put out the Chris Mouse, the Christ Mouse. I don't even know how to pronounce it myself.
Well,
And
if you don't know.
I wrote it. So,
Yeah.
but we put it out, and there's an opportunity for you to watch it right now, and then we can have a little bit.
Then
or not?
It's still
downloading.
Okay. That's
I
all right.
can't even show my own film. Rubbish. Yeah.
Yes, we've got
No.
Christoph Keating on the chat saying 3's a crowd. Yes, 2's company, 3's a crowd. We'll vote one member off
That's
before the hour is out.
Yeah.
He's asked, which is more ecological, fake plastic tree or non-plastic tree you cut down for your private pleasure? How dare you? And then he said, I'll have to ask Saint Greta. Ooh, yes.
Greta.
Yes.
Yeah.
What are those people?
Yeah, Christmas presumably is a bad idea for saving the planet as a general rule.
Yeah.
You should not, there's canceling Christmas because of coronavirus, but then there's the planet presumably wants us not to have a celebration of the incarnation of the Son of God.
Wow. Okay.
Surely
Are we
Greta
going
would
there?
say, Greta, I'm assuming, look how much waste, look how much extra plastic, look how much
Extra carbon. Isn't
Yeah.
that the thing? Like
all the traveling.
like when you're told all the things you can do to cut down on your carbon footprint.
Yeah.
And it's just like all of it is totally swallowed by having another kid. Like having another kid,
Yeah.
completely
Yeah.
like blows out all your carbon kind of emissions, such that the best thing you can possibly do is not have kids. So therefore, is Christmas a truly environmentally friendly thing? God decided to have.
Yeah. Jesus was not carbon neutral.
It's like,
So yeah.
it's the worst thing you can do, having kids. So I don't know.
Taking a dark turn.
Yeah,
Very early already. So.
An antenatal nativity, basically. Yeah.
But we are going to chat through, if we can't get the video up straight away, we are going to chat through the main points of our gathering here this evening, which is Christmas talks. Are we trying too hard?
Okay.
What do I mean by that?
And we, so are we, so those who have any kind of responsibility for explaining the Christmas message, proclaiming the incarnation at this time of year, there are some really good ways of going about it, and there are some ways that we have stumbled and fallen in the past, and we will tell some tales of shame. But hopefully as ways of suggesting some good ways forward, I think, for preaching the incarnation.
Yes, we're basically saying if you have to give a Christmas talk, there are some ways in which you can feel you've got to keep it fresh, you've got to give people something they weren't expecting, you've got to surprise them, and so you end up working too hard and doing something which maybe misses the point because it's,
and if we were on the Cooper and Carey Have Words podcast right now, we'd be saying, you already have the Christ child.
Yes.
You already have the Christ child. You don't really need to jazz that up. But
already have Jesus.
See where you're going.
Yeah.
Oh,
Jazz that up.
Oh yes. That's for later.
Save it.
For
Save
later.
it.
Yeah.
So why don't we have a look at the Christmas like as the answer to all our Christmas woes? I mean, we could just like shove that right at the end and just let's go through the six.
We're gonna say that the solution to everyone's Christmas failures in ministry is to show
press
our
play.
We
Press
have
play.
the answers.
We have
Only
the answers.
hold
Yeah,
the
yeah.
answers.
Okay. Yeah. Followed by the explained video.
It's
But it
behind
might-
a paywall.
Yeah.
yeah. It's only $4.99, but it might be the way we have to go anyway, given the download speeds. We've got,
Okay.
so
What is the current download progress so far? team?
Well, okay.
That's good.
We could-
92.
Could you do 8% waffle now,
I mean,
Paul?
it's never stopped us any other week, has it? So it should be fine.
Yeah, I think one of the things about the Christmas issue, about how you preach Christmas, it's just an intensified version of the same issue we have the rest of the year,
Right.
which is, so at Christmas, it's a particularly Jesus-shaped festival. The reason for the season is Jesus,
Yeah.
and the hint is in the name. It's Christ Mass.
Yeah.
But we then struggle with, well, how do you use the cultural elements that people are familiar with for Christmas
Yeah.
in order to give the true message of Christ? But in a sense, that's not a new or a different issue to anyone preaching in the sort of the post-Christian West, because every aspect of our society has been shaped by Jesus. And there'll be various reasons why people show up in church that, you know, don't have anything to do with a heartfelt love for Christ. And yet we do use cultural aspects in order to preach Christ. So I think a lot of what we talk about in terms of people come into the building to hear a certain thing, and we want to give them something that's kind of like it, but also something that's much different to it.
But do you think that's particularly to do with outreach and evangelistic preaching? Or do you think it's actually part of the kind of bread and butter preaching through the books?
Yeah,
Anyway.
I think if you're interested in those who aren't Christians showing up on a Sunday,
right,
whether they show up in July or whether they show up in December, you've still got the issue of there is a certain cultural Christianity that they might have familiarity with, that might have shaped their life beyond the church.
Yeah.
And then I think different Christians have different responses to what you do with that familiarity. And some Christians, and usually it's in the non-Anglican worlds, have much more of a sense of, well, that which is beyond the church, like we're going to build something very different to the world. Whereas in the Anglican world, we're just going to be chaplains to the world. And so I think there's much more of a bridge building mentality within sort of Anglican-y churches.
Yeah.
And there's much more of a particularity to sort of non-Anglican churches. And I think you see that reflected in how different churches take advantage of Christmas. Whether you do the carols by candlelight, dimly lit thing, and the 9 lessons and carols thing, or whether you like make your church service look quite like it looked like it was in July anyway.
Yeah.
I think
So
there'll be
you're almost going to not use Christmas as a connection point, because it's like the starting point is already confused and diluted and so ungodly and un-Christ focused that you want to just forget all about it.
Yeah. I had this interesting Twitter conversation with a Baptist pastor up north, and he on Twitter said it was Palm Sunday, and he said, it's Palm Sunday, so I preached on Judges 12 because we're in the book of Judges, and I'm just preaching through the passage. So I just said, what are you preaching next week? And he said, oh, well, because next week is Easter, I'm going to preach on 1 Corinthians 15. And I was like, well, okay, so you do believe in a church calendar, like to some degree.
Yeah.
And then he said, well, no, but that's just because it's an evangelistic opportunity. But then my point is, what if the entire church calendar is an evangelistic opportunity? What if the whole like structuring of this ordinary time, and then you have Christmas that leads on into Lent, that leads on into...
Can we find that? Because that that image is a very useful one. I don't know if one of the guys can manage to pull up the
church. The church calendar. We used it in Foundry Unlocked. It's a cycle, the cycle of the church calendar that has 50% of the year is ordinary time, and now we've just left ordinary time. Now we're in extraordinary time, according to sort of traditional churches. And this is why we're getting our Christmas on, and this is why we're getting interested in preaching through the year the shape of the gospel. And so you've got Advent, and then you've got kind of Epiphany, and you come through, and there's Lent, and it leads on to Easter, and then you've got you know,
You
resurrection.
actually just missed Christmas. When
yeah. There's Epiphany.
Okay. Yeah,
I think you're missing somebody.
He's post Christmas.
I'm taking the Christmas out of Christmas.
That's
That's the worst.
But so that's the thing. The idea that we've got now within the Church of England, at least you've got 4 weeks, 4 sort of Sundays of Advent.
Yeah.
Which is the waiting period, which we talk about. It's not just the waiting for the first coming of Christ. There's also a sense in which the church is now waiting for the second coming of Christ.
Yes.
And so you look at those passages, Old and New Testament, which talk about Jesus coming and his return as well.
Yes.
Which I do, I talked about that with various people in terms of the natural cycles of the year. And, last week was Thanksgiving. And so for the whole of America was like, we've got to stop and eat turkey and sweet potatoes and pumpkin. And you do it because it's the annual thing. And yet if your Christianity just is like, oh no, we think all of that stuff is just a waste of time.
Yeah.
And we just want to get on with the kind of putting it into practice day to day and not being kind of religious.
Right.
You actually miss out on some of the riches of.
And you can't do it.
Gospel.
Like other rituals will come in because you cannot live a ritual-free life. I was watching Jonathan Peugeot the other day. He was kind of talking about, if someone's in a conversation with you and they just get down on the floor and start, just carry on the conversation like they're on the floor, like everything breaks down in that relationship instantly. There are rituals involved in just having a conversation, and you reach out your hand and you shake hands like that, and you meet. If you talk to the back of someone's head, that's not cool. If you turn the other way, that's not cool. If you get down on the floor, that's not cool. Everything we do is ritualized, but ritualized how and what's informing that? And at least if you've got something like a church calendar, you're evangelizing the calendar. Yeah, you're kind of preaching the gospel to and through the way you see time. So that would be my argument for being a bit more traditional than constantly trying to be modern. Somebody on Saturday just said I asked, what's your church like? The first thing she said is, it's modern. And I just thought that's really interesting that down through the centuries, probably a lot of Christians would have said, it's good that my church is ancient. But I think, nowadays our churches, they want to be modern.
But do you think she felt that was something you were going to go, oh yeah, cool. Good. I like modern. Modern's good, isn't it?
Yeah.
No one wants stuffy and old.
No, yeah. What is old? Stuffy. That's what we think.
That's what you think, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. We're hip. We're happening. I don't want that church. I would not fit in for a start.
But do you think that's tricky because obviously we're doing, a live streamed video with a podcast, and that we make films and we're talking about culture and that feels to people, well, that couldn't possibly be connected to the ancient church. That must therefore be trying to reject the church's history and do something new and different and cool.
Yeah. Digital Gnosis in the comments. I much prefer an ancient Christianity to a modern one. And I'm the youngest one here, he says. Well, who knows? You might be. But you're certainly younger than us lot. Yeah, the 3 dads. What was the title you wanted for this evening?
3 men and a little baby Jesus. No?
And the thing is, only people our age understand that was a film.
I want to be Tom Selleck.
Nathan, if you're watching Nathan, that was a film from the 1980s.
Yeah. There was a
Tom Selleck
called
Steve Guttenberg. And
Steve Guttenberg.
And the guy from Cheers.
Ted Danson.
Ted Danson.
Yeah.
Wasn't that, yeah. But it was a French film first, wasn't it?
Was it?
I think it was.
But then there was a sequel. This is great.
3 Men and a Little Lady.
A Little Lady,
yeah.
Which is, maybe that's due a remake. I think we are ready now. We've downloaded our own Christmas film that we can show. Are we good to go? Let's press the big red button.
Oh, come, Emmanuel, and ransom that mourns in lonely exile here, until the Son of God appear. Oh, come now, day spring from on high, and cheer us by thy drawing nigh. Disperse the gloomy clouds of night, and as dark shadows put to flight, come now, Key of David, come, and open wide our heavenly home. Rejoice, rejoice, Emmanuel shall come to thee, shall come to thee, shall come to thee.
Hey, you deserve the respect.
All the
Here
best boys, the key
Suffering.
grips, the gaffers, they're all in there.
Back in now. Great. So yeah, there we go. There's our Christmas video. It's Christmas offering for this year. It's kind of your brainchild, isn't it, Nate? Yeah. So
Yes.
what's the, you seem a bit unsure. But,
Yeah.
so where was the origins of this? Where's it come from?
So the origins came from actually a conversation I had with a friend of mine who had a mouse problem. And he was asking me if we'd ever had a mouse problem and what we'd done to solve the mouse problem. And I said we'd tried humane traps and all sorts of stuff, but the only thing that really worked were the traditional snap traps. And I said every morning was this kind of strange, macabre anticipation as you come down the stairs to see what you would find under the kitchen sink. That's where we had them. And I said it was a lot like a sort of deathly version of Christmas morning, where you don't know what you're going to find. And I put those two things together. I thought, oh, that's an interesting kind of correlation of waking up and, oh, has he been? You know, like, did we get him? And
that's how I think of Santa.
That's right.
The Santa trap.
We did.
Put a big trap.
Naked behind the wall. But so I thought there was something. That's the part of the excitement of Christmas is the anticipation. And I wondered whether there was a way to put those two types of anticipation alongside each other and to finish with a kind of surprise happy ending. And and so that's how we sort of came up with it. It's turned out much sweeter than I think we'd first thought. We thought it was going to be this kind of hilarious comedy, and
more poignant.
The sweetness to it.
And so when people watch it, what's the thing? What's the one thing? Well, it might be more than one thing, but what would you want people to take away from that?
I suppose it's a classic kind of enemies become friends story. And I think there's something about that to Christmas, that God comes to us who are rebels against him, those who don't deserve his friendship. God comes in friendship as Emmanuel, God with us. And so that's the sort of, the shape that I think the Christmas film has and the story of Christmas.
Nice.
Friendship is where it ends, I think.
And with such an ignominious little Christ figure, just the humble little mouse, and yet answering with kindness when the woman just wants to kill him. And it's beautiful.
So that was the heart of it. And of course we've got O Come Emmanuel, which Micah, who's move the camera, give us a little wiggle of the camera, Micah. There we go. No, you don't to show yourself. Just to show that you're here. We're here from Micah later. He's going to do the quiz. But so Micah and a girl named Rebecca Tubbs, who I've never actually met, but she did an outstanding job with the soundtrack. So but singing the classic kind of Advent carol, O Come Emmanuel, to hopefully point people to make that connection.
And are we going to release the director's cut in which actually the final scene is as the old woman picks up the ring and then snap, the mouse gets her, and we just have two little legs like
dragged away,
twitching,
dragged under the cooker.
The mice are gonna dine like kings tonight. When are we releasing that version?
Okay, if you want the cheese, but if you get the cheese provider, then you get all the cheese.
That would be just desserts, though, wouldn't it? That would just desserts.
It would.
You
trying to kill
dig
me.
A pit, you fall into it. Hoisted on her own petard.
But yes,
I was overruled with that ending.
We're looking at Emmanuel as the heart of I think our Christmas film that year. This year, and particularly thinking about loneliness, so that's why we linked with Linking Lives UK and spoke with Dr. Mary Northway last week. I think she was on the show. So we're really excited to connect with them and to be part of that. So.
And if people want to get the film, you can go to speaklife.org.uk/Christmouse, or you can go to speaklife.org.uk/Christmas, and you can download that film along with our other back catalogue. And don't need to ask to use it. No.
I think most of December is spent just fielding emails from people saying, "Can we use your video? Is that all right?" And you go, "Yes, yes." It's fine. Just do it.
Just fine. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, people can do that. But we should change gears to talk about these 6 things. Count them. 6.
Or six, if you're Christoph. He's in the comments. He's French.
Yeah. So we've got 6 things that we want to look at in terms of trying a bit too hard in your Christmas talk, and not just doing the Christmas talk, the good old-fashioned old story. And the first one of these is alternative. The alternative Christmas.
Did we say they all begin with A?
Oh yes, they are. They are alliterative.
They're all very
do a
alliterative.
slow
The seventh,
review.
the seventh thing is the alliterative Christmas, and you definitely, we are anti-alliterative. That's
But what do we mean by alternative Christmas? What are we saying? Where people try a bit too hard.
Yeah, I often get this when I'm asked to do student carols, and like the Christian the Christian Union at some university will say, "Come and we've decided to make things a bit modern, so we're deciding to do a jazz Christmas," and so we've and
Jazz being the most modern of genres.
Yes.
But you need it with a twist. You need to spice it up.
Grime Christmas.
Yeah, trap.
Yeah.
And he drops the bass.
Yeah, and you just think we've got the carols. People like the carols. Why don't we just stick with the carols?
And it is incredibly hard, actually, to find good versions of carols just to play, at home or in the car that you can sing along to as though you were singing them in a traditional carol service.
Yeah.
Like the number of times someone will put one out and it's all this kind of, all this modern music.
Well, the thing is, though, most Christian, most modern Christian versions of carols tend to be just done in the style of U2, which there's kind of classic chimey delay sounds, which are about 20 years old anyway. Yeah. So no one's really thinking, I can't wait to get to this church to hear some U2 sounding stuff.
Or it's like pentatonics or something like that.
Oh yeah.
And you've got to be like, we can't do.
Can't hit that note. Yeah.
Oh, it's exhausting.
Married to know.
So the alternative to the alternative carols is
just keep it traditional. The traditional carols.
People want the traditional carols.
That's exactly what
you
people
already
want.
have the Christ child. Yeah, you already have the Wesley.
An excellent selection of Christmas carols.
Yeah.
Set to familiar tunes that your guests can join in with.
Yeah. Even if they've not been to church, people know the tunes to these songs, don't they?
Yeah.
They always do. Like when I teach guitar, I do some with the youngest kids. I do some carols, and I always say, "Do you know this?" And they say no, and I play it, and they go, "Oh yeah, I do know that."
Yeah.
Like they all know it, even like 6-year-olds.
Yeah.
No.
Do it. So do the alternative to the alternative Christmas, which is Christmas.
Okay, so the alternative Christmas
should
be an alternative, which is traditional Christmas. But what about abrupt Christmas?
Okay.
So the second way that begins with A that we're thinking about trying a bit too hard at Christmas is the abrupt Christmas talk.
Yeah.
What's an abrupt Christmas talk?
Well, I often come across this when people realize kind of almost halfway through, you just think like at some point in their preparation, the preacher has realized that this has something to do with the Incarnation. But they've got a whole armful of, stories about buying presents for their mother-in-law that went wrong or something. And then, but they're like, oh, where do I put the Incarnation? And then like 20 minutes in, there's this, and then God came in skin. Weird, huh?
Yeah.
Anyway, back to the mother-in-law.
Yeah.
And it's this idea that the Incarnation itself is off to one side. And we need to reference it. We need to name check Christ in two natures or whatever. Whereas the burden of the rest of what you're trying to communicate it lies somewhere else. And so it's this abrupt sort of shift to Incarnation. Anyway, back to what I'm talking. So am I the only one who's come across this?
No, but I think in certain circles, like because we see Christmas as an evangelistic opportunity, we tend to, or at least in the circles I've been in, when we think of evangelism, we think evangelism means get to the cross and tell people about Jesus dying on the cross, penal substitution, just get straight to that. And actually, I mean, I don't think I've ever been, no one's ever said to me, here's how you can use the incarnation to speak evangelistically. Like I've been to 100 camps or weekends away or whatever, or evangelistic meetings where you can hear largely the same message about Jesus going to the cross.
Yes.
And that's the evangelistic bit. But I've never really heard anyone say, and here's what you can do with Jesus coming into the world.
It is because the incarnation being that Christ, who is one person, now takes on a second nature. So he's got his divine nature and his human nature. And because that feels as complicated as trying to explain the Trinity, we just run away and go, non-Christians don't need to worry about this. And then we just go, Christmas is busy. You'll feel more peaceful if you accept Jesus. And we just sort of run away.
Yeah.
Rather than saying that the incarnation, the very miracle of Christmas,
the mystery at the heart
is itself the solution that we're looking for. And don't just let that do the work.
It's because we don't have a theology of incarnation. We just don't. It's just.
What do you mean by that for us?
So incarnation is Christ taking on flesh, carnus in Latin, which
chili con
carne is chili with
meat,
right? And so Jesus became meat.
I thought the incarnation was Jesus becoming condensed milk.
Incarnation.
That was the joke that I was not going to tell earlier on, and Glenn said he would laugh ahead of time.
Oh, that was the joke.
That was the one.
Yeah, that probably deserved the ha that I gave it earlier. But so Jesus takes on me. It's the basest words that in John 1:14, the basest word that John could kind of reach for. The word became what? Socks, right? Yeah. Which is in Latin,
which is American for socks.
Really.
Which is the basest garment that you put on around your smelly feet, and the word took on flesh, meat. You ask a philosopher, what is humanity? They might say we are rational animals. And you ask a biologist, what is humanity? They'll say we're Homo sapiens. You ask a butcher, what is humanity? They'll say meat. Or you ask a family of mice, what is
dodgy. What's a human being, mate?
Meat.
I'm good, thanks.
Did I tell you the other day? I was just reminiscing about when a Christian Union was about to invite me to speak, and the guy who was leading the meeting sort of asks those really ridiculous icebreaker questions, like, would you rather hands for feet or feet for hands, and all that nonsense. And he said, if you're a food, what food would you be? And I said, I am food. And so are you. He just said, okay, I'm going to pray for you now. And then I went and spoke, and it didn't go over that well that night. Okay. But
I was asked once, what's the biggest thing you've ever killed? Which is a strange opener.
Yeah. And what was it?
I think it's a pheasant.
But no, with your bare hands.
No, well, it was with my Hyundai actually, but I just hit it.
Yeah. But... Wow. I had to swear through a field, but I got it in the end
eventually.
I did. Chased him down. Right. So that is the abrupt. We're going to
finish that quickly now.
But the abrupt thing
is just like God in skin. Isn't that weird? Back to what I was talking about.
So we're saying we ought, as the church, to preach the incarnation as the heart of Christmas.
Yeah.
To preach that God took on flesh. It's not a weird abstract thing that maybe could make sense to some weird theologians. It's a real heartbeat thing.
It's the heartbeat of the church. As Digital Gnosis says, the incarnation speaks evangelistically itself. And then Christoph has said, it reminds me of how John Piper gave a talk on the essentials of Christianity with 1 Corinthians 15 as the text, and he managed not to mention the resurrection of Jesus. And I think actually the idea of incarnation and resurrection, we just we've got this
Mm.
weirdly kind of hermetically sealed cross that happens. And it doesn't matter that Christ is man. And it doesn't matter that
Okay.
Christ has been raised as the second Adam. It just matters that God zaps your sins onto Jesus in your place.
Well, that brings us to our what are we on now?
Third.
Our third A
Mhm.
of things which might be working a bit too hard, which is Glenn has a word, Anselmian, which of course refers to Anselm,
Mm.
who lived in the
11th? What we say?
11th
Oh,
century.
quick Google. Anselm of
And wrote
Canterbury.
a book called Cur Deus Homo,
Oh, come on. Go on,
which
then. Go
is
on, Nate.
Why God Man.
Yes.
Or
God,
why
man?
did God become man?
Yeah.
And
12th. Okay. 12th
you were saying that on this subject of the incarnation, when you press into the theology of it,
Mm.
that there is a danger in preaching an Anselmian incarnation rather than an Athanasian incarnation. Now,
Stick with me, people.
I'm sure
Always a worry.
Nathan in the chat and loads of other people are going, yeah, we know the difference between those two.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure everyone in this room does. So, Glenn,
Yeah.
tell us.
So, why did God become man?
Yeah.
There is this logical syllogism for Anselm. Okay. A
Okay.
syllogism is, all men are mortal. Socrates is a man. Socrates is mortal. Right.
Okay.
And the logic flows. If the premises are true, then the conclusion naturally follows. Right.
Yeah.
So Anselm has got this a watertight logical argument that's like, I'm not going to be able to reproduce it, but it's basically the problem with humanity is our sin.
Yeah.
We must be judged for our sin. In order for that judgment to be rightly taken, then it needs to fall on man.
Yeah.
Why did God become man? In order to be the recipient of the
Okay.
zapping that would happen, such that the judgment falls on Jesus and doesn't fall on us.
Right.
Which is true as far as it goes.
Okay.
Mhm.
But it's just divorced from. It's kind of divorced from the incarnation, divorced from the resurrection.
Okay.
It's just kind of what God really wants to do is express righteous anger at sin
Okay.
and zap it. And then once he's zapped it, phew, he can be at peace.
So in a way, Jesus has to become fully human in order to take the price for sin on the cross. So his 30 years are basically irrelevant because he's just got to get to maturity and then he can be killed.
Right.
But nothing really that happens between Bethlehem and its triumphal entry is really important. Is that what?
Yep.
Okay.
And then once he's been zapped, it's kind of like the static electricity has been discharged. It's
Okay.
all cool now.
Okay.
And we go back to, being cool with God. Now,
Yeah.
obviously, he's shouting at me from heaven right now saying, that's not what I said, or this, And so what I'm talking about is the caricature has become what we think of as the preaching of the cross. And so often the preaching of the cross that I hear is like God is angry at sin and he has to zap a substitute. And it's almost like the substitute. He could just zap the wood of the cross and let all that judgment sort of discharge onto the cross. And then he can be happy with you. And but the incarnation doesn't really play a massive role. The resurrection doesn't really play a massive role. It's all about just getting to the cross.
Okay.
But it's the cross in this very anemic, very limited kind of sense.
Yeah.
Is the Anselm thing.
And the better option is
The better option, I would say, is just let's stick with the A's and go with Athanasian, who is very much, God became what we are, that we might become what he is, right?
Okay.
God became man, that man might become God. It's an ontological kind of thing. It's a thing at the level of being that Christ, using the language of Luke 15, the shepherd who goes out and finds the lost sheep, he hoists the sheep onto his shoulders and carries humanity home. And yes, he must carry humanity through the judgment of the cross, because that, sin belongs to us, and therefore the curse belongs to us, and God's judgment belongs to us. And Christ hides us in his body and marches us through that. But that's not where it stops. It stops with the feast, and like through the judgment, out Christ comes so that he really carries humanity home to the bosom of the Father. And it's far more about our being brought back into communion with God.
And so that the Athanasian approach has got a stronger sense of union with Christ.
Yes.
And rather than an Anselmian approach, which could leave the believer and Christ as sort of quite separate.
It's transactional.
And
just over there.
Like how many times does our gospel presentation default to Jesus died for us over there so that we're kept safe over here?
Yeah.
Whereas I think it's like 20 times in the New Testament talks about us dying in Christ.
Yeah.
And isn't that interesting? Like the New Testament again and again and again and again and again says, I died in Christ, or I died with Christ, or I was crucified with Christ, I was buried with him in baptism, all that. And it's very much that Athanasian sense of Christ taking us to himself and like carrying us through the furnace and coming out the other side. Not I'm glad that Jesus over there is taking the zapping, so me over here gets the blessing. It's transactional, it's distant, there's no kind of union with Christ type stuff going on. And then at the end, like the good news is, I guess I avoided getting zapped. Good. But here I am. Few. Grateful. But there's still a distance. And I haven't been carried home to the Father. I've kind of I've got out of jail free, Digital Gnosis says the Anselmian account is as stale as a credit broker's calculations. It is very transactional. It's very, and so are so many of our gospel presentations. Merry Christmas, everyone.
Okay, but what about the ones? And I'm segueing here to the fourth A, which is the apologetic, where basically the main aim of the talk is to show you how the very first Christmas fits into your historical timeline and is mainly there to teach you some first century Roman history.
Yeah. I mean, you can, and I think, I guess we've been some of us have been guilty of this, but you can understand why people want to do that, don't you? Because it's that Jesus became a man in history, and we can say, look, here's the story. Here's, Herod, and here's these figures. Here's the historical places where he was born, and we can see, look, geographically, this is where they are on the map, and we can see that, from these bits outside the Bible that Jesus was a real person. This story isn't just a made-up fairy tale. And I think, when we think about this, it makes me think of the Christian Union lunch bar thing, where you have your mission week and you say, right, here's 5 lunch bars, and we're going to have all these questions that we're going to answer for the non-Christian. And actually, it's quite possible that the non-Christian isn't really asking those questions. Now, there may well be people who turn up to your services. In fact, it's highly likely there'll be people who just turned up with family members because they've got to come at Christmas and they don't really want to be there. And they may think that the whole Jesus thing is a complete load of nonsense and he didn't even exist. However, I don't think the answer to even that is doing your apologetics talk about why we can believe that Jesus was a historically real character,
or that Luke's gospel is good history,
is reliable. Let's look at the first 4 verses of Luke, and this, but actually, I think, keep saying it now. I think what works better is a bit like in 321. In the book 321, you say just invite people into the story. So you may have questions about this, that, and the other, whether it's historical or whether it's moral issues. Why don't you put those aside and let me just invite you into the story? Come and look around the house. That's the image you use, isn't it? Of the house of Christianity. Just show you around it, and you preach Jesus. So you give them Jesus, not an argument for Jesus being the real person. And Jesus himself is the one who speaks to people's hearts, and brings people around. So I mean, there's a place for apologetics. Obviously, I don't think the carol service is it, though.
That's a really interesting phrase, that Jesus is a real person. Like we feel like we want to say Jesus is a real person. So often, if we're just in this mode of apologetics, Jesus is a real person is he actually walked the dusty first century roads of Palestine, and you could have seen his footprints if you'd walked behind him, and he was a real historical figure. Whereas I wonder whether Jesus was a real person is best answered by saying he genuinely took on your humanity. You know, the one who made you has genuinely got eye color and hair color, and he's got hair on the back of his hands, and he's and you immerse people in the story, and because
well, isn't that why people find it hard to preach that though? Because don't we think sometimes if we say God became man, the danger is that people go away thinking God just put on like a man outfit, dressed up for a little while, and how do you actually bring across two natures? Because people think, like you said, this is top level theology stuff, two natures, but actually, flipping heck, keep saying, but
actually,
have a guess what our next A word is. The part of the challenge with the search for the historical Jesus is that there has been a shift, or there was a movement in the 20th century liberal side of the church to search for a historical Jesus and to basically question the historical reliability of the entire Bible, and particularly the Gospels, and to sow seeds of massive doubts as to whether this entire thing was just a complete fairy story that had no basis in reality as most people would understand that word. And so I wonder whether there was a time in which a huge number of people were raising this question, whether it was at universities or they might be coming to a carol service and they go, oh, this is all very nice, but of course we all know that really it's all nonsense, and it's very nice for you to believe. And so there was a sense in which the church wanted to encourage people, that phrase, you don't have to leave your brain at the door, which I've always thought was the worst phrase.
You don't have to.
What on... No one was thinking about lobotomies.
Which organ would you ordinarily leave at the door? I mean, if you had to choose one.
And so in an attempt to try to encourage people to to not to throw the Bible away off, to start with, because when you say to someone, okay, well, here the Bible says this, and then they go, but I don't believe any of that's true, that was a way to do it. But that in a sense that's carried on to a place where lots of people aren't asking that question and aren't coming with that as the starting point. So when you introduce it as a problem, there's a lot of other people like, hold on, what?
Oh yeah, that is a problem.
oh, great.
Even the vicar thinks so.
Yeah. So it's a challenging one, but of course you then miss out on so much of what there is to say about the glory of the Incarnation if your entire focus is on the census that brought Joseph and Mary to Bethlehem. Which is just put there as simple fact. You know what I mean? Deal with it.
And it's a tangled issue. If you don't want to just take it on faith, and you just, okay, how do I kind of integrate that with what we know of Roman history? Your 12 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever you've got.
Exactly. Yeah.
That time is gone.
That's true.
Nathan says, showing the Incarnation speaks to everyone where they're at. It cuts through all the genre of Roman bioi, of Roman lives, Roman biographies. Christoph Keating says, I went to a Christmas service where the Church of England retired bishop spoke on Luke and how Luke wasn't intending to write history. It was still a good service because he only spoke for 10 minutes.
I knew someone who said that his dad, whenever a bishop came to speak, he would deduct them a point from 10 every time they mentioned Jesus, because he said that meant at the end of every sermon he could say, well done, bishop, 10 out of 10.
Oh, no. Oh, that's so sad.
Oh,
Christoph,
wow.
that's so sad.
Oh, my goodness, that is so weighty. If anyone ever tells me that after a sermon, I'm going to go, hold on.
Yeah. Christoph then says the service was really readings and carols.
Oh,
Traditional.
they are
gotta
traditional. But
Yeah.
we should move on to
Yeah.
our fifth A
Mm.
of things to probably avoid, because you might be working a bit too hard when Christmas is right there for you,
Mhm.
is favorite phrase. But actually,
Mm.
what do we mean when we say don't preach a but actually sermon at Christmas?
Yeah. It's the one where we say, well, you think you know what Christmas is about. We all know the story, don't we? We all know the story. But actually, no, you don't know the story. Little donkey? No, there was no donkey.
There was no donkey.
No crying he made. What are you talking about? No,
Yeah,
there's no
yeah.
stable. There's no innkeeper.
Yeah.
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 The Magi and the shepherds, they were never there together.
You think you know, but you know nothing.
Everything you've been told is a lie. But trust me.
Yes.
Yeah. Deconstruction. Deconstruction is a very
That
popular
is a
thing,
very
right?
popular today, isn't
Very
it?
popular thing right
Mm.
now. But like
Yeah.
some of the most conservative biblical scholars kind of started it in terms of yeah.
So why is that not a good thing to do then? Because it's true.
Well, what's true in what sense? So okay.
Well, there was no stable, you know.
Well, I don't know about that. I mean, there was a manger, which is a feeding trough
Yeah. For
You know.
animals.
for animals. It's not not feeding trough for people. It's behind your back.
Just to
people.
clarify.
Well, actually,
Actually,
who was laid there? Whose
Okay.
body was laid for us to feed?
Yeah.
the carnot. Yeah.
Exactly.
In the house of bread, the Beit
Done there.
Lechem.
He's
But
done you
the
there,
Beit
Glenn.
Lechem.
He's
In the
made
house,
you look
yeah.
a right mug.
Yeah, and I think that the issue that people are trying to debunk is it's the nativity tableau.
The nativity. What?
The nativity tableau. By which, of course, I mean at the end of a children's nativity service, you will have the beautiful scene of the little baby Jesus in the manger, and then Mary and Joseph just behind him. And usually to the right, you'll have like the shepherds and maybe a little sheep. And just behind Mary and Joseph, maybe a cow. And then just to the left, you've got three wise men kneeling at various sort of heights so that they can all still be seen in the picture. You've got some angels at the background and then a star in the middle. And it's a perfect image to capture the sort of glorious cosmic reality of the incarnation.
Yeah.
That right there in the heart of the picture is the God who has become man to dwell with us.
The light of the world around which everything else orbits.
Oh, we're going to get to that as well.
Yeah,
We should do a
yeah.
Chris Dingle in a minute.
Oh, yeah. That,
And then sort of going out from him, you have the rich and the poor, the sort of the unlearned and the learned.
Mhm.
You've got different, you've got Mary and Joseph, sort of, in one sense, a kind of Adam and Eve kind of, figure or figures. You have the angels.
Yeah.
So you've got the heavenly host are right there.
Mhm.
And it's kind of set within this little frame of the humble stable. So that tableau, which is recognizable to pretty much everyone in the UK right now, if you would just show them that and say, what do you think this is a picture of? They would recognize it. And yet in our Christmas services, we want to go, no, that wouldn't have been there. They wouldn't have been there. We can't have that. Why would they all be facing the same way? There's no camera. It's nonsense.
Yeah.
That sort of thing.
Yeah. And what is and what do you gain? Like you've traded away that beautiful cosmic scene,
Yeah.
in which on the y-axis you've got angels above and you've got donkeys and oxen, below, and on the x-axis you've got shepherds at the one end and the kings or the magi, at the other end with Jew and Gentile. Like it's the most cosmic picture imaginable.
Yeah.
Let's trade that all for what?
For gritty drama.
For this kind of hyper Protestant desire to trash everything traditional.
Yeah.
And get back to the Bible and just to the Bible. And I think there are good biblical reasons for saying there was an ox and a donkey. Isaiah 1. The oxen doesn't know its owner and the donkey doesn't know its manger. What is it? Anyway, Isaiah 1. Where is it? Isaiah 1 verse. Stick with me, people. It will be here. I'm gonna search for ox.
But
The
it,
ox knows its master, the
Okay.
donkey its own manger, but Israel does not know. My people do not understand. And
ah,
you know, it's kind of
yeah, but that's in the Old Testament, Glenn.
Sure,
Nothing to do with the New Testament. Why would you make
Isaiah is like the
those
biggest
connections?
Christmassy like book
Yeah,
of them
yeah,
all, really.
yeah.
But yeah, there's this desire to kind of undercut everything that's traditional.
Yeah.
And just get back to the basic Bible. And you've thrown out the cosmic incarnation, you know. It's like
People
Bad
don't
trait.
tend to be thrilled by it, actually.
Although as preachers, it's
I
very
mean, good to feel that you've got some, there's some movement in the sermon where
Yeah.
people are thinking, one thing, and then you're able to show them it's something else.
yes.
That is a way of teaching, in a way of
Yeah.
moving people
Yeah.
and captivating them and taking them through the story.
Yeah.
But yes,
But so this actually that we're describing is trading off the magical for the prosaic, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
like, yeah, there's this kind of sentimentalized sort of
Yeah.
tableau thing, but I'm going to give you the gritty reality. I think there's a much better, like you preached whenever it was 2 weeks ago. You didn't actually. But you
always doing that.
Yeah, usually like all three of my
Yeah.
points are actually. You think this
Yeah.
wrong, but
Yeah.
your actually was the opposite way around. Your actually was it's defeating the 5,000. Everyone thinks this is who cares about that.
Yeah.
Actually,
Yeah.
it's awesome.
Yeah.
So I think there are good ways of doing actuallys.
Yeah.
You think you think Christmas is a sentimental little thing around a hearth.
Yeah.
And you're all watching Christmas films until you fall asleep, full of Quality Street chocolate.
Yeah.
Actually, it's bigger than that, and so I think there are ways of doing the actually that go in the other direction.
And there are ways of doing that actually about the hearth and the Christmas movie and the Quality Street chocolate that doesn't say all those things are rubbish, aren't they? They're terrible. That's not what Christmas is about.
Right.
But saying no, if you push through
yeah.
Christmas movie, the hearth, the Christmas tree, and the Quality Street to see what they're really images of.
Yeah.
And it's the classic Lewis Weight
Carol?
of Glory.
Oh, yeah. Right.
We're far too easily satisfied.
Yeah.
It's like you want your Christmas to be cozy.
Right.
You want to put on your woolen socks and watch, It's a Wonderful Life with a fire and some Hotel Chocolat. Then you're content with that.
Yeah.
Like, no, you need something but
Yeah.
way bigger.
And it
way more
embraces
glorious.
it because it's the incarnation, and therefore to have a carnal Christmas is quite cool. It's like our response to the over commercialized or over sentimentalized Christmas is not to become Ebenezer Scrooge, right?
Yeah.
It's actually to embrace what we can of that and feast, because it's the feast of the incarnation.
Yeah.
And on the sentimental point, it's not that we think it's less sentimental, but it's a much more weighty thing to say that at the heart of the cosmos is a family. And we're inviting in Jew and Gentile, shepherd and magi, from far and wide, and that will be costly and all the rest of it. And so there is a family thing to Christmas. But it's a bigger thing than what you think, not the opposite of what you think.
Yeah, and so I was at a conference in Birmingham, Alabama, back in January this year, and it was called what was it called? Church Revitalization Conference, and the major theme that they use is the lampstand. Okay, it's about churches as lampstands from Revelation, and just looking at the tending of the lampstand and what that represents in terms of the church's life and growth and witness. So great conference. Although I can't remember the name. Dr. Harry Reeder was the guy who runs it, and the images of this lampstand, which is shaped like a tree, and it's a tree of light. And it's there in the holy place of the tabernacle, in which you also have this table of the bread of presence and the incense. And then you go through, and what you go through into the most holy place to find, you find a seat, the throne. And so I was looking at that, I was thinking, wow, we're all sitting around in late November and December, sitting in a room with a tree of lights, with, you know, a table of the bread of, you know, like the food
and
We've
lots
got
of
these-
presents.
and
Nice.
and we want to be in that seated in that chair. That's where we want to be. But that's actually what
Santa's throne. Is that
what
you're
is
talking about?
the grotto? That's it. Take your kids to the shopping mall. And but that's what Christ takes his people as the high priest through into, is to sit at the right hand of the Father in a family room of warmth and joy and fellowships. Like, we think we've, you know, come up with this because it gets a bit dark, you know, in the winter. But no, this is in a sense a picture of reality, and we're just far too easily pleased.
Well, there's an actually I wasn't expecting.
Oh,
wow.
We pushed in
Wow.
an extra actually.
Yeah, but yeah, okay. So we're okay with actuallys as long as they add to the magic.
Yeah, go through and beyond.
Yeah.
Go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't just go.
Christmas is not less than sentimental. It's more. It's
Yeah.
not less than commercialized. It's
Yeah.
more. Yeah.
Let's finish on one more, which is angry.
I forgot that one.
The angry Christmas talk.
Oh man.
When does this come out, and what does it do? What does it look like?
It came out of me 20 years ago. I was thinking actually this afternoon, it would be 20 years ago. I was preaching in a central London church at a lunchtime carols concert.
Yeah.
And all the solicitors and architects had come into the church, and the church was packed out. And I was speaking after, "Oh, come let us adore him."
Okay.
And at some stage in my talk, I said to the people, "You've just sung, 'Oh, come let us adore him.' But do you? Do you? I mean, adore him." And then I think I even said, the word adore, doesn't that just turn your English stomachs?
Oh no. Angry.
It's
Also.
like angry. Where does that come? And I was shocked that I'd said that. And then everyone else was shocked that I'd said that. And I think coming out of me was just the angry vicar who's just like, you know, where were you the other 51 Sundays of the year? I know you show up just because there's mulled wine. It's appalling, absolutely appalling. But yeah, it can be in the heart that.
And I think that's a good point, that for a lot of the people who are doing Christmas talks and Christmas sermons, they've been doing quite a lot of them.
Yes, yeah.
They're a bit sort of, what am I going to do for Christmas this year? And if you have forgotten the reason for the season, if you've taken Christ out of Christmas, you've turned it into, you know, not because you're trying to, but you've become jaded about the incarnation. You feel that you have just want to recycle years old talks. You can see how you could come there and go, I stand here every year, and these people turn up.
Yeah.
They're not CRV, they're CND, they're Christmas and Easter, and nothing makes any difference. And so I'm bitter that we put on this religious festival and then they leave unmoved, and that but you can see how that wears people down,
absolutely,
because they're not.
Have you preached an angry Christmas, Paul?
No, I don't think I have actually. I know. Specifically because I do remember being at a service, not at Christmas, but it was actually back to church Sunday, not at the church I'm currently at, where the vicar took it as an opportunity to just berate people for not coming for the rest
Why
of the
weren't
year.
you here? Because this is what you're like.
So I don't really know why I'm here.
Yeah.
But again, if it's a microcosm of, if Christmas is a microcosm of all of ministry in the post-Christian West, you know, I wonder if that diagnoses a bit of a problem. That, you know, I was at a conference this last weekend, and it was all about the 95. You know, 95% of 0 to 18-year-olds are not in church on a Sunday. Only 5% are.
Okay.
And like I gave this talk about, you know, how are we meant to think about those figures? There's 5% in church, 95% outside of church.
Yeah.
And actually, I sort of got thinking, if the church is meant to be the royal priesthood, 1 Peter 2, well, think about the priesthood in the Old Testament. Like the Levites were a 12th of Israel. So they were like 8%. And their job was to minister to and bring, the presence of the Lord to the 92%. And did they do that angrily? Did they do that like with annoyance? Were they just like, I can't believe they've forgotten the reason for Passover? It's just like, Actually, no, like written into the Passover is the youngest member of the household says, why is tonight not like any other night? And their spiritual elders, not them, berate them for their spiritual forgetfulness. I can't believe how ignorant you are. It's like, oh, what? Isn't that joyful? They don't know. I get to tell them.
Yeah.
And what if the 92% or the 95% have no idea what the reason for the season is? And what if that's exactly the way God wants it?
What if you've actually got good news for people?
Yeah.
Can you imagine?
Yeah. And what if it's our privilege and our joy to just say, hey, I love that you love this stuff. Jesus built it. And I know that you know that on some level.
Yeah.
And let me give you the good news of, because the whole world is stopping to honor the incarnation of God. Like, and people on some level kind of know that.
Yeah.
They know that Jesus is the most significant figure in world history. It's the year 2021. It's 2021 years since since Christmas. The whole world grinds to a halt to honor the single most important figure in human history. Like, people know it's a big deal, and they're coming, and hooray, they're coming.
Yeah.
And they might think it's about donkeys and mulled wine. Okay.
Yeah.
Can we work with that? Or are we going to berate them? And I've spent too long doing the angry thing.
Yeah. So Christmas, it really is the most wonderful time of the year.
Stop getting it wrong.
Yeah, we'll do an angry.
It's an angry one to finish.
About how people are getting it so wrong. But I think that is what we have got through all of our A's: alternative, abrupt, apologetic, Anselmian, actually, and angry.
Yeah.
I think that was
wonderful that we finished on angry, wasn't it?
Yes.
Good way to finish.
But yes, we thank you very much for joining us on this first full speakeasy. And we ask that you would leave some comments or whatever else it is. If you're watching this not as it's going out live, thank you very much. We hope you're well. And if you would like to support the work of Speak Life, we would love it if you could do that. If you're a Christian and you would love to pray for us, we would love it if you can share with us in the ministry here. We would also really appreciate your financial support as well, if that's something you can give. If you go to speaklife.org.uk/give, you can find out ways to do that tax effectively. And you will also get the opportunity to join our Discord server, in which we share prayer requests and give updates and little secret sort of tidbits about things that are coming up within the Speak Life family. So join us on that. But from me, Nate Morgan Locke.
And from me, Glen Scrivener.
And from me, Paul Feesey.
Good night.
Ciao.